in Japan and China, skateboarding is skyrocketing. Some of the best pros, they're doing reality TV shows, and the culture in the United States is dead, and they've evacuated the country. That's free trade. I have this tweet. I tweeted it December 29th. I said, I effing despise free trade. It extracted American jobs and gutted our culture. To which Brad responded, tell me you don't understand economics at all without telling me. To which I responded, you don't know ish about what these policies did to my industry and culture. And Brad said, let's debate it. So this actually is one of the crudest and most simplest forms of the culture versus economics debate. The point I was making was not an economic one. It was quite literally a cultural one, to which I stated. And Brad's, your response was on economics, which shows the fracture between the two ideas at play. And
you did say extracted jobs, though, so that touches on economics.
It extracted American jobs, which ended up gutting our culture, which it absolutely did as a fact. And there are a few industries that have been particularly destroyed, completely eradicated. And this wiped out the culture of which I have dedicated and spent my whole life a part of, which is largely skateboarding. It is dead completely. It's thriving in Asia. I'm not surprised to see that, considering the entirety of the skateboard industry was extracted to Asia. And some of the most prominent companies and biggest cultural hubs have now relocated to China and Japan instead of the United States. And it's because of free trade. And they started selling back our products to us that were originally made by Americans for dirt costs because it's made by slave labor. I get so absolutely angry about this.
Yeah, it's evil, though, because to put any industry in Asia, the word skateboard is probably kind of hard for them to say, you know, skateboard. So it's like kind of a mean thing, but also it's true. It's like the guy who named Lululemon. You know, he named it. He literally said, "Why'd you name Lululemon?" He was racist, right? And he said because it's hard for Asians to say because they say Lululemon.
I heard that.
That's a true statement. That he did. He literally. He also said the clothes weren't for fat people. That's why it makes them thin. Because if you can see your skin through the pants in the shop, it's not for you. But I do think it's kind of weird that we'd give skateboarding out there, because maybe it's just like my typical understanding. But I think of skateboarding as like an OC white guys, sort of mentality. I mean, we have a lot of black guys or whatever that do it now. But the Asian people, I've never seen really an Asian in Asia skateboarding. Is that even a thing?
Oh, bro, the best skateboarders in the world now are Asians, and.
You do kickflip now, like the parents, Call me when you're professional.
Well, center of gravity.
So that's all. I'll frame this in a way for anybody who doesn't know or care about skateboarding. Let's remove that and just say American sport, which was largely popular in Southern California and still was for a long time this mecca, as it were, of skateboarding. If you lived, like when I grew up, skateboarding has its ups and downs. It was big in like the 70s, then it kind of waned, then it came back a little bit in the 80s, then it waned, then it came back a little bit in the 90s, completely died in the mid 90s and was resurrected in the late in 1999 and 2000 with the Tony Hawk Pro Skater game that came out, birthing this new generation and this era where you had the CKY videos became a massive success on VHS, and then you got Viva La Bam and all this Bam Margera and Jackass skateboard stuff. You had skateboarders who were millionaires. It was a multi-billion-dollar industry. And they made skateboards here, and there were skateboard shops. And then companies decided to have North American rock maple shipped to China, which is expensive, turned into skateboards for pennies on the dollar by slave labor in China, and then shipped back to the United States, which is ridiculously expensive. But because their labor costs had dropped so much and there was no tariff or penalty to doing this trade, companies stopped producing skateboards. And even to this day, as we launched Boonies HQ and we sell skateboards, we were pitched by all of these manufacturers to buy from China instead of America. And I said, why would I invest in a foreign country's industry when I'm trying to bring skateboarding back to the United States? Skateboarding is dead. As an industry, has been completely ripped to shreds. Bro, some of these pros that used to be some of the biggest names in my generation, they're Uber drivers. One guy, famously now posting videos, working at Lowe's. These are professional athletes who previously had contracts with major companies, shoe deals, have been destroyed. And now what we're getting is, when you watch these skate contests, they're in Asia, they're in China. Why? Well, here's how it works. When skateboarding, let's just say American sport again, you don't worry about skateboarding. When they started making skateboards, this is like, I don't know, early 60s or whatever, there's this famous Life magazine of a woman, I forget her name, doing a handstand on these little oval-shaped boards. They had clay wheels. Shops started to appear, started to make these boards, and it's like one person, two people, and then they would do community events. They'd say, we need to market this product to our neighbors and to our community. So they would put up flyers and they'd tell everybody, hey, come down to the park. We're going to do this skateboard thing. And parents would be like, oh, wow, let's go check out whatever this thing is. Let's go. It's Sunday in the park. And there's this very famous Life magazine where in Central Park, they have all of these people. And there's a man wearing a suit with sunglasses and nobody knows who he is. The mysterious man. Never found him. And he's got his hands in his pockets and he's cruising down Lil Hill on a skateboard. When these kids were brought to these community events because there was marketing and promotion being done, these kids picked up skateboarding and developed this culture. They showed their friends, they told their friends. When the shop started selling more skateboards to these promotional events, they hired more locals to start manufacturing skateboards. These men would then make boards, bring them home to their kids, and thus the culture is expanding. It has waned, it has its up and downs, but largely skateboarding continued to evolve and develop. And eventually we got to the point where companies figured out we don't need to make skateboards in America anymore. We can use these shipping lanes to China. Now here's the reality. It's really expensive to do this, but Chinese slave labor is so cheap, we can get an additional $10 per board. So they come to us and they say, Tim, if you're going to sell skateboards, if you want to make your own custom decks, go with China. They're of comparable quality, and that's true. They are actually really good. And you'll make $10 more per board. And I said, and then there will be no local events. There will be no local manufacturing shop. There will be no father showing the child what he's doing. There will be no skateboard community events around the area where they make these skateboards. There will be no factory. It'll be in China. And the Chinese workers will show their kids, and the culture will develop there. And where we are today is that in Japan and China, skateboarding is skyrocketing. Some of the best pros, they're doing reality TV shows, and the culture in the United States is dead, and they've evacuated the country. That's free trade. That is what outsourcing and free trade has done to skateboarding. It is completely dead, and there are pro skateboarders now doing Uber delivery. So that's why I say I despise free trade. And it's not the only industry this has happened to.
Don't you
think it's to a bunch of cultures?
Don't you think it's slightly myopic to condemn all of free trade based on one micro niche industry and culture?
Nope. I think you are singling out the fact that it directly affected my culture to say it's only one small thing, when in fact, I've gotten waves of comments and emails from people saying the same thing happened to my industry. It happened to snowboarding. It happened to surfing. And that's easy for me to say because they're related sports, but there's a whole bunch of other industries that have been completely destroyed by outsourcing.
The idea that Tim's essentially presenting that it's cheaper for a company to go overseas, build a factory, and have their products made there because there are no, and this is something that should fall right in your wheelhouse. There are no labor laws. There's no minimum wage. There's no unions. It's cheaper for a company to build a plant in China where they can hire essentially slave labor or people for pennies as opposed to dollars and ship all the raw materials they need to China, have it built in China, and then ship it back. If that's something that's uncontroversial to talk about. That is absolutely something that's happened over the past 30, 40 years. It's not some secret. Everybody's kind of aware of it. And a big part of the reason why the United States is in the position that it's in with jobs and with not having good jobs for people is because the government here and unions and labor laws here and unions have made made producing things here super, super hard. Tim was talking just last night about the difficulties that he's facing with the state of West Virginia with hiring
West
people.
Virginia.
Well,
honestly, I'm going to second that because I'm from California and I remember all of that BS.
But the point, and you're totally right, Elijah, but the point is, regulation makes it difficult to do business, and regulation is why we had this outsourcing of jobs and sending.
Well, that's not free trade.
Pardon me?
That's a totally different question than free trade.
It's a triple hit. It is regulations slam business in the United States, which I think you probably agree with.
Yeah.
Environmental regulations restrict any certain kinds of business operations, and then they remove tariffs and restrictions on free trade, forcing companies to say, well, we have no choice. We have to manufacture or build our factories in China because we can't do them in the United States.
But I want to hear, but see, what I think is interesting about Brad, I want to hear your opinion because all I'm getting from this, this is the first time I'm seeing this, right? So if I'm a normie and I'm like looking at this, which I am here, you see Tim Pool said, I effing despise free trade. So obviously there's like a statement about a certain, subject, right? So free trade, he doesn't like it. And he has a reason why. It extracted American jobs. It gutted our culture. So the idea is that, the economy, it's giving our jobs overseas. And essentially with that, right, you're seeing the degradation like we saw with the iron and steel mills and whatnot going on in the Midwest, where eventually if you lose these jobs, you lose blue collar workers. If you lose that, you lose cities, you lose towns, you lose a huge part of what makes America, America, right? Where we're just a country of people who get 4-year degrees and work, entry-level jobs typing on Excel spreadsheets. You lose a lot of what's going on. Plus, including, like he said, with the skateboards, you actually even lose quality. This actually changes entire industries, etc. And then you said, tell me you don't understand economics without telling me. I don't understand economics. Tell me why he's wrong.
Well, because free trade has been one of the most profound forces for human development and poverty relief since 1980. If you look at the expansion of free trade globally, the drops in levels of absolute poverty have been astounding. Economists who study this view it as almost miraculous, the growth and decrease in human poverty and suffering we've seen, in part because of the expansion of global trade. The living standards enabled in the United States by free trade, where everyone is walking around with supercomputers in their pockets, where people have access to a life that even 50 or 100 years ago, the richest people's lives compared to the poorest people's today you'd rather be a poor person today than the richest person than be Rockefeller in the early 20th century. The living standards that are enabled by this are phenomenal. The improvements in human progress are miraculous, and you can't actually put that genie back in the bottle. Attempts to undo it, really, you can't undo progress. A lot of what you're mad about here is progress, not trade.
So the points that you're making are I'm 100% on board with all the stuff you're saying, and that's where my libertarian foundation comes through. It is true that without that trade and markets lift people out of poverty. The reason why poverty is almost been totally wiped out globally, except for very, very few areas, is because of free trade and because of trade and markets and stuff. So, and the number of unnecessary deaths in a society goes down correspondingly with the wealth of that society. So like there's a meme that we talk about, like number go up so it's good, right? And yeah, chart go up or whatever. And that's a meme, and it's
but there's also truth to it.
Exactly. That there is a kernel of truth, and maybe even more than a kernel of truth, that rich societies do not have as much unnecessary death as poor societies, and they don't have as much unnecessary violence. They're always more peaceful. They're more collaborative societies. You end up with a better result when you're dealing with rich societies. And I'm sure that there are any number of ways that you can dissect these things, but the idea that having a rich society is not preferable to having a poorer society, that's just not right.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.